everyone, and welcome to the very first GFD North video podcast. So today I'm going to be talking to Alberto Petronio, who is one of our presenters, who will be presenting on the Sunday, the 7th of August this year. Alberto's background is in product design and technical concept art. One of his first jobs out of school was at Peninfarina, where he worked as a transportation designer and modeler. He then went on to Egosoft to work as a spaceship artist in Germany. Currently, he lives in Manchester, England, working as a vehicle artist at Cloud Imperium Games. So without further ado, can I please welcome Alberto Petronio. Alberto, how are you doing?
I'm alright, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic, it's great to have you on. So I'm just going to be running through some questions today with Alberto, such as who inspired him when he started out his career. I'm going to be going over other questions such as design principles and the lessons he's learned from his industrial design background. And I'm also going to be going over what his advice would be to someone starting now. So if we just want to start out by going over Alberto's portfolio and some of the work that he's done, that'd be great. So I've got this first piece here, which is a Starlifter door. So Alberto, could you just explain to us all what this piece is, who it was created for, and why?
So these are the doors for the Starlifter C2 version for the game Star Citizen. It wasn't my first project when I was in the company. I started to work in a company in the March of 2020. So basically, I signed the contract, took my computer, and get home.
Right.
So that was the first challenge, working with slow internet, trying to communicate with a lot of colleagues I never met. And one of the first things that in CAG you start with as a vehicle artist is generally doors, because they're simple, you know how they work, there's not much science behind what's just a door despite how you let it look. And you learn about modeling, animation, texturing, materials, etc.
Yeah, I can see, even though it's quite simple, there does seem to be quite a lot of interlocking parts on this one especially. This one looks quite complicated. How long would something like this typically take you?
Well, at the time I had to relearn 3D Max that I haven't used for some year. In the meanwhile, not just the updates of 3D Max arrived, but also I had to learn all the tools that CAG give you disposal of for the integration with the engine, etc. And you have to learn the language of the video game. So in our video games we have different factories that create different kind of ships for different proposals, so you have to learn their separate language, basically like a real life industry.
Okay, so for example, this set of doors, what factory was this for in the game?
That was created by Crusader, one of the 4 main planets of the first system in Star Citizen. So we didn't have many ships done before this from Crusader. We didn't have any. We were doing in parallel the Mercury and the Starlifter.
Great. Yeah, very interesting. Very, very clean, quite minimalist. Very interesting distribution of detail as well.
Yeah, it was interesting also because they were used also on the Mercury, which we haven't done, but our other studios have done. But being from the same company in the video games, they've been used on both spaceships. So I had the possibility to see it in the game before it actually came out on this ship. And something like that can take you up to 2-3 weeks, considering I was a starter though.
And was this part of the same spaceship as well?
Yes, this is the hold that just takes two doors so that you can load your tanks and cars and vehicles, generally land vehicles, inside your spaceship, and you don't have to maneuver it around it. You just get out and in from rear and front ramps. So I had the possibility to design also the animation of the front door, the animation of the back doors, the ramp themselves, creating the materials for the floors. Some of the materials for floors, not all of them.
Yeah. So you were working alongside a texture artist while you're creating this interior?
Not really. We had a set of texture already given to us, and we could decide if there was the need to create our own. So I've been told quickly how to use Substance Designer to create the texture you can see on the floor where there are the grips for the trucks.
Right.
So just that bit was not intended before, because we didn't have anything like that. We could have solved that just with polygons, made them of another color, but the polygon was going to really explode at that point. So we decided to take the space for one texture more, one set of texture more.
Okay. And with something like this, I'm guessing you were looking at huge transportation planes as your main inspiration.
Yes.
So it really does remind me of some of those huge Hercules type aircraft that you see, some of the detail and the way it's laid out. It's very nice.
Yeah, most of cargo planes, so we have gigabytes and gigabytes of folders full of pictures.
I'm actually just looking, I've got the animation of the aircraft, or the spaceship rather, opening up the doors here. It looks absolutely incredible. You can see the huge doors opening out.
It's just a pity you cannot hear the sounds, because the sound of these doors opening is just so amazing. I really appreciate what the audio team did on this piece.
It's really incredible,
Yeah, the secret here was to not moving a lot of pieces, because if you move a lot of pieces, let's say that a lot of bugs can intercur and ruin things and pop objects out, kick things, let the ship explode in consequences. So we had to give the idea of something very big moving without using too many pieces.
And would this be something that you do as well, or was this handled by somebody else on the team? Did you do all the animation on this as well?
I did all the animation.
You did the animation as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because right now my position is kind of a hybrid between a creative position and a more technical position, despite the fact that I am moving soon to a completely creative position as vehicle concept artist. But despite the fact that generally this is stuff done by animators, we like to do our own animations, or sometimes they are retouched by the animation team, but generally we know what we want and how we have to work. We are in constant communication with the designers that know their items, that an open and close animation for a door seems like something very simple, but if it interrupts the stream of the travel in an environment, it can become really frustrating. So like dead games that keep having animation of picking things on the ground, they become a little flawless, a little arrhythmic. So that's important to be in constant contact with designers.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, that's really interesting. I can see some incredible detail as well in these the textures of the floor. I'm just looking. I've got the interior of the Crusader. This is the Crusader, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone can see this who's watching. It's an incredible amount of detail that's gone in purely just into the floor. A lot of thought as well of how the cables and pipes and things run underneath the floor. It's really good.
Yeah, thank you very much. We care a lot about the design of our spaceships.
Yeah. So, and while we're on the topic of spaceships, I'll just go over to this gunship here, because this is the one that we currently have on GFD North. So, what was the main inspiration for this? Was this inspired by the same universe? This was for a personal project, right?
This is a personal project, yes.
A personal project,
I have done before getting hired in Cloud Imperium Games.
Oh, right, okay. So was this the piece that actually got your foot in the door with Cloud Imperium then?
No, I did it because I wanted that, since I was waiting for an answer after I did the art test. But
Right.
I wanted to be sure to get the position, so privately I started to make this in order to present them in no more than 3 months, but in 2.5 months they actually gave me the offer,
Great,
which I
yeah.
accepted. So I took like a month more to polish some animation and try to do something cool. And the main inspiration, of course, is Aegis from Star Citizen, indeed, but the inspirations are not limited to that. There is a lot of Killzone, a lot of Mike Hill.
Yeah, I can see that Killzone influence in some of the shapes. Quite aggressive, and the layering and things. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of people told me that from above it looks like a GPU, like an NVIDIA graphic card.
I can see it. Yeah, there's a lot of very nice like interlocking shapes. Very nice. A lot of thick to thin as well. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to show that I was able to animate, even though this is quite of a old project right now. I kind of start seeing too many errors that I wouldn't do again.
Oh right. Okay. So in terms of things you would do differently, what is it that you would do differently next time then?
Well, I would not use a boring system like the piston that I put there. For
you feel like
let
this
the
could be
engine
better.
move.
Yeah.
I would just think that one hit and they would break, and that they are kind of a lazy solution for what I still consider a decent concept. With more time, maybe I would have put more thought in that area. Yeah. Nevertheless, I really like the shape.
Yeah, well, actually, I think it's a good point to make. If this is a gunship that goes into battle, and these pistons are hit from front fire, assuming it doesn't have a shield system, then maybe it needs some armour that protects the pistons. But I think it's a good habit to have as well for the students out there, is self-critique, the ability to just take a step back and look at your own work and just say to yourself, well, how could I make it better? I'm assuming throughout the entire process there were some points where you paused, that the ship changed, that you maybe changed certain parts, maybe swapped things around, and I think that's a really important part that every designer goes through, is this phase of iteration and testing things and getting rid of parts. I'm sure in studio as well with your art director on your day-to-day job, things get changed a lot. So,
I mean, I am sure that if there was not the rush of finishing it as soon as possible to present it to CIG, I would have done things differently. While at the moment I understand that I was already going to get the job, it was basically finished and just needed a decal pass, so I took more time to do that, but I didn't change more stuff. But if it was like a completely free form project just done for my portfolio, it would have taken many different iterations. I am someone quite slow at concluding this kind of stuff, because I start one, I do a first iteration, then I pause it, I start something new, then I come back, do a change, continue the second project, come back on this one, make the renders, stop it for a while, more renders, and some projects may take years actually.
Years?
Of course, not in total, but from like.
Yeah. And for the people out there who are listening in, typically when you're in a studio and you get given a task, say, to design a spaceship, roughly how long are you given to go through that process? I know the timeline in games, you guys generally have a bit more time than, say, film, but how long would it really take to design something, say, like a spaceship, like similar to this?
Well, I don't think I am the right person to ask this, because so far I've been in production, so we were given concept, but I can say that it can take from 4 months for a little one to 1 or more than 1 year for bigger ones. I would say that Star Citizen is an exception in the industry, because our game is based on spaceships, so we particularly take care of them. Like before, when I was working in Germany in Egosoft, it was a 17 people studio, and in that case it was much less, like 3 weeks each ship, interior and exterior, with all the setup and concept included. Maybe 4 weeks. Of course, it was a low poly game, but not even that low poly.
Yeah. And in terms of the designs at Egosoft, is it because there's a low amount of detail given to the interiors? Because I know on Star Citizen, for example, there's a lot of detail and areas inside that the player can walk around and explore.
I mean, in Egosoft we were working with less polygons, also because the engine was done by us, was not a Unreal Engine that can manage even not Unreal Engine 5, but just Unreal Engine 4 could manage much more polygons and texture and raw codes that the engine made by programmers when in the studio. So we had different limits. One was, of course, the poly count, but also the bigger are the interiors, the less time I'm passing doing the other ships. So if we have to publish in 2 years, and there are 2 artists, one that does the spaceship, the other one that does everything else, there is less time to take care, of course. So at the time I've been called there because they claimed they had a problem with spaceships, that they were not particularly conic, so that they were looking for someone who had experience on real life vehicles.
Just to give it that next level of realism. So at Egosoft, were you also focusing more on the actual design of the spaceship as well, or was that handled by somebody else, or we kind of working together?
No, that was completely handled by me, and in some case my lead was providing me a grey box, a blockout.
Blockhouse, yeah.
There is a post on our station about that. I just put all I've done in 1 year.
Okay, which one is it?
X4, that one.
Okay, let's take a look. And so this is the work that you did at Egosoft?
Yes, so the first is like the cover of the game. I worked on a DLC, on 2 DLCs actually.
Great.
So, and I've done the capital ships. This one, for example, had the blockout given by my lead, Lino Thomas, at the time, and then I just put the detail and the colors and the materials. And I basically was a couple of polygons before.
And at this stage, while you're at Egosoft, were you also providing animation then, or was that not part of your work?
Yeah, I was.
You was in animation as well. Okay.
Yeah, it's not that there were that many, because we were trying to keep things as simpler as possible for the engine. So if a door open, the door open. No secondary animation, no tertiary animations, no locks, no weird stuff going on. So we had to use some trick to give the impression that more things were moving than the one that were moving, especially in the weapons, which I took care. You can find some probably on the bottom of the post.
Sure, let's take a look at some of those weapon designs. I can also imagine, I know briefly before you mentioned about the poly count, this hull is made up of many individual parts, so I can imagine this probably caused quite some issues in terms of keeping the poly count quite low. There's a lot of detail as well. I'm guessing some of this done with normal maps, or how did you get this started? Yeah, it is, yeah.
So
it looks great though. It really managed to pull it off there. I mean, it looks like there's a ton of detail and stuff going on the back. So.
Yeah, that's the Atlas textures surely helps, because then you don't have to texture things in Substance Painter after, so you don't have really a limit for resolution, especially because you can walk on that path that you can see in the middle of the ship, so you would see around yourself quite blurry details if it was done in a traditional way. We had a limit of 64,000 polygons on the main body, and a limit of around 200, I think, on the details, because the details had no collisions, so it was much cheaper, the process. and no more than 8 materials per object, which means 8 draw calls per object.
Right.
So basically no more than 16 draw calls per ship.
It's very impressive what you guys have managed to do with a limit of 8 materials, did you say?
Yep.
8 materials, yeah. Really great result as well.
Well, we had more materials, but no more than 8 in the same piece, just that.
Yeah, very interesting what you can do as well with just the lighting and the way you've rendered these. It looks really interesting.
Yeah, that are done in Blender, just for presentation.
Yeah. Okay, let's just take a look at some of these weapon designs you were talking about as well.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, so these are all designed again, concepts by you, design and animation also by you, is that right?
Yeah, this is all by me. So we had the possibility of let just 2 things move, 2 elements, because then if adding the rotation of the X pivot and the Y pivot, it would have been too expensive to add another 3rd element. So we decided to make a hole in the exterior part of the barrel and show through that the interior part of the barrel with that cylindrical part that create these repeating effects that may give the idea that this is a weapon with a strong recoil.
Yeah. And how big would this thing be? I mean, it's quite hard to tell the scale. Is it absolutely massive? I mean,
it's quite massive because it was for a capital ship. Unfortunately, a criticism I have on this design is that it looks like, I would say, around 1-2 meters big, while this was probably around 30.
This is interesting. Yeah, it's fantastic. I'd say as well, there's some. I think there's a barrel almost that you can see being pulled back. I'm sure the guys watching this on the video can see. You can actually see all the way inside the weapon as well, which is fantastic. So it's interesting.
Thank you.
We've also got is this a fly through of one of the ship interiors here? I believe this is the cockpit, right? Okay.
Yeah, this is the cockpit, the big cockpit of a capital ship.
We've got the navigation system there. If we just rewind, I think we can see the navigation system as well in the center.
Yeah,
some
it was not interactable, it was just fluff, to be honest, but we like to have it. And there is a smaller version of this cockpit, just without this corridor.
Very nice, very nice.
But I like the idea of having something that introduces you to the cockpit that you don't see just outside of the left, directly the glass of the cockpit and the dashboard. So we put this element in the center to disorient the player, not let him understand where to go for the first time, so he doesn't know that left and right are basically the same, but it just gives more depth to the design despite.
Yeah. And is there a reason for the lighting? Is it ties into the story? What is the story behind this world and the way the spaceship is laid out? Is it supposed to give the feeling of suspense and be quite moody? Is that the overall feel of the game?
Well, the faction of these ships called Split in the lore of X4 is basically related to a very negative acception. So these Splits are an alien race that are very belligerent and
quite evil.
Splitted into factions. One of, I don't know, I would say almost comparable to Nazis, and another one that is like a mercenary group, so it had to give a very strong and dark vibe. So that's why the red light coming from below.
Yeah, you definitely get that feeling with these. Lots of angular shapes, lots of kind of like, dark pockets of like pure black.
Yeah, it was not easy also because we had to keep in contact and continue being consistent with older games done by not very experienced people, and so you need a link with the past, despite the past was not perfectly designed, and yet you need to let it feel a little newer, so it wasn't easy. But for the time we had, I'm quite satisfied.
Yeah, quite a good result. I know you mentioned that you had your own custom game engine to run this on. What software were you actually using to create this? Because before you mentioned when we were talking about the Crusader piece, they had to learn some parts of 3ds Max. So we were using a completely different software during your time at EgoSoft.
Yeah. So I was using Blender for
Blender,
the modeling and unwrapping, and then I was making the setup in Max again.
Yeah.
But it was literally just crossing over a material and creating loads through decimators, which are not the way we do it in Star Citizen, because we do loads by hand, and that's it. And then it was going in the engine.
Fantastic.
That's the Bernie Sanders meme that was very popular 1 year ago.
I think I must have missed that one. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. I'm not. I don't think I've kept up to date enough on my internet memes, so. I don't know. It looks pretty cool to me. It kind of looks like an old man in slippers, but with an alien head.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You can see some screenshots of some interiors.
Yeah, I can see some clay windows here. Yeah, really nice shape design, good distribution of detail, like large areas of rest.
Yeah, for example, for giving these extremism, it's probably the very wrong word for this, but I wanted to give in the vibe of a cult place instead of a common place, so to let understand that these people are hierarchic and again comparable to Nazis. I gave this very holy or kind of vibe to the area.
Holy, you mean? So almost like walking to a church or something like that.
Yes, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely gives that feeling. Got the kind of the large glass window, walking down a corridor. You got some kind of like liquid either side inside a spaceship. Yep. What's the reason for this?
There is no absolutely reason. We had to limit the place where the IA could walk, and we had to justify it. So I thought it was just being more scenographic with water.
Yeah, just as a nice effect almost.
It's like cooling, going through your pipes. So.
Yeah, that's it. Just say it's it's to help cool the engines. Just say that.
It's just an excuse.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. This is where we keep the engine cooling. Just don't step on it. So.
Just have to look evil.
Yeah, that's it. Just has to look evil. Okay, and okay, are there any other pieces that we can go through? Maybe I know you mentioned maybe talk about the space pen. Is there an interesting story behind this? Why did you make this, and who for?
Beginning of my career, after I finished the course of design, industrial design in an Italian university, I got hired by Peninfarina, which is particularly famous because till 2012 they were designing cars for Ferraris. Then Ferraris opened their own design studio. So we keep doing things for different clients, especially the extra section that was the one I was working in, that mainly took everything that was not a car, basically, or a car or a motorcycle. So we're doing bikes, yachts, planes, trains, etc. And there was the opportunity with one of our clients to get in contact with another of our clients. So Pininfarina was participated in a stock market by Alenia, the French company that created 3 of the 12 ISS modules.
Right.
And they had the contact with Paolo Nespoli, which is one of the most important astronaut of ASI, Aerospace, Italy. And one of the most important in ESA. Since he was 60, he was going for a mission in 2017 on the ISS for 6 months.
Is this man here, by the way?
Yes, he's Paolo.
Okay.
He was going to study the effects of low gravity on old people, because he's just 60, by the way, and he's much fitter than me.
Right.
And it was his 3rd time in space, so also quite a record for Italian astronauts. Yeah. And we had the possibility of getting in contact with him to sponsor this pen produced by Napkin Pen, which is an Italian company we worked at before, which is interesting because they don't use ink or graphite for for leaving a track on the paper, but it basically oxidates in contact of the paper. So let's say it might be infinite.
Right. So it doesn't use ink at all. So how does that work then?
It's like a league between iron and silver, and probably some lead. I don't remember. I probably wouldn't even be allowed to say it if I knew it. So it just basically like copper oxidate with water, deoxidate in contact with paper.
Right.
So it leave on the paper, according to the composition of paper, a sign comparable to the one of a pencil.
It sounds like a very expensive pen.
It's on Amazon for 120 euros, so around £90. Yeah.
I hope they gave you one once you finish the design.
Yeah.
Oh, you actually have one? Seriously? Oh, nice.
Discounted, not for free.
Oh, really? That's so tight. Yeah.
But this was almost a zero budget project. It was just basically done for self promotion. So they gave the project to me. I was a junior, just getting the company, but it was so fun to do it because I had to see one of my design in space. Is quite a cool thing, and sometimes I see it around, especially in Turin, which has quite of a culture for aerospace, since we have Alenia and the building of the Modius Galileo or the Modius Cupola for the ISS. All of that stuff was designed there, and the Polytechnic of Turin is quite famous for rocket science.
Right.
So sometimes there are in shops you can see it. Is quite fun.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about doing the design is finally getting to see that thing built and out in the world or in the game and seeing the final product. It's very rewarding, I think, as a job.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I'm still happy I changed. It was very limiting and very different work from concept design in a way. Of course, we're still talking about designing things, so it's not that different. But in the principle, it's quite different.
Yeah. And so, even today, do you still carry some of those same design philosophies over into spaceship design?
Some of them, especially, I would say, the attention to ergonomy, which is something we get an answer in an indirect way. Like, if you go inside, let's say you're in a car or you're in a plane, your attention, be it in a video game or be it real life, goes to where you need attention. So in a car, generally you don't have anything reflective or with strong accent around the glass because you must be focused on what's outside of the glass. And same will be in a video game. In a warplane, you will have very clearly design where your hands go, where your legs go, where you have to press what. Same for our spaceships. What I think is really different between industrial design and concept design for video games and movies is that in industrial design we try to take things that are very ordinary, like a pen, and let it look sci-fi and unbelievable and outside of this world, while in video games and movies we take spaceships, laser guns, I don't know, dragons, and try to let them feel more believable and more real as possible. So there is this conflicting difference, I think.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting point that you brought up, where, say, in real life, you do need to try and keep the area around the glass clear, because the driver can't be distracted. Whereas in a lot of sci-fi games, there's so many glowing, UI elements, and everything seems to shine.
I'd say so.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes obviously some games are quite realistic and try to keep things grounded and believable. But you're right. I think sometimes in games and films we really go over the top with the detail and the glowing things that can probably distract a real life vehicle design, for example. So, saying go on.
No, please continue.
Yeah, so just while we're talking about design, Is there anything that you like to keep in mind in terms of principles when you're designing, say, one of these spaceships? Are there any kind of key things that you think are really important to nail down? Whether it's maybe coming up with an interesting function, do you think maybe just really focusing on nailing the overall shape design is more important? What is something that you feel is important to your design process that makes a successful design?
Well, first, I will say that I haven't mastered the spaceship design, so I am still learning. And what I may say, I think it works in the industry, is trying to do something balanced between function and shape. You may end up having something super iconic that makes no sense at all, or something that makes sense at all that nobody will remember because it's a square. So there are differences in history of design that can make your spaceship become a unique masterpiece, like is the Millennium Falcon or the spaceships from the Expanse, that I think are very high, especially the Expanse. I think is not just the most realistic, but some of the most well-designed spaceship world ever done. So it's something I tend to love. But I don't have a secret, I guess.
I feel like in a lot of these images that I've currently got up on the screen, there's actually quite a lot of storytelling as well. For example, some of these look like a spaceship that's currently being lived in. For example, we can see there's like plants growing on the inside of that window, and it looks like the spaceship is currently being repaired by someone. And I feel that storytelling in your spaceship design is quite important as well, because it adds a layer of complexity and believability than something that is, something that looks like it's been just pulled out of the factory. I feel like that's really important, especially in games and films, because you can add all these extra like little story moments that just give it that extra level of realism.
Yeah, this is a project that probably took me the longest between my portfolio, because this went over 1 year. And it started with an idea and had so many iterations. In the meanwhile, I was learning Blender in Germany, so it had a lot of things going on, but basically the concept between these, it was just to repurpose in a sci-fi key the migrants ship of the Mediterranean Sea, done with scraps, trying to bring people to point A to point B without letting die less people as possible.
So I think that's always a good thing to keep in mind when you're designing a vehicle, for sure. Yeah. So I like this design because it also seems to have this mixture of very advanced technology, and then we have things like rubber tires that you would see on a boat, right?
Yeah, that is a space shuttle just reversed, with people living in, with things just put together. So
yeah, we can see that.
It was more meant to be like a cyberpunk vibe, made of scrap and stuff like that.
Yeah, bolt it together, and you've got all the wires and things like just holding these parts together, which is really interesting. Yeah, I think we can see some guys as well sleeping on one of the decks.
Yeah, I took so much time to make the guys sleeping with the thermal mattress, and in the end I didn't even had the possibility to show it properly because it was such a heavy file.
I can imagine.
Making a render was like an attempt out of 12 for just not let it crash.
Yeah.
In the project after, it was the gunship I made. I took a lot of care of how to take things
how do you feel
a little lighter.
And how do you feel Blender compared to 3ds Max for handling heavy files? Because personally, when I use Blender and the file size gets quite heavy, it does tend to crash quite a bit. I imagine you probably had similar issues with this.
I had a lot of issues with this also because the file had 12 gigabytes of texture attached, so I guess partially it was my fault. It's a while I don't use 3D Max for rendering, and I'm happy like this, honestly. I know that Blender has some issue managing a lot of polygons. I thought that it was worth using less polygons than using another software, to be honest. I don't want to be one of that guys that press people to use Blender, but if I had to pay it, I would pay it.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely improved quite a bit. I started using Blender about a year and a half ago, on and off. I mean, for me, it's fine. I've been using Modo for quite a few years, so my issue coming from Modo to Blender was just the speed of the modeling and just making sure that Blender kind of had the same shortcuts, and I could get like a similar result in a similar amount of time. Like I say, the Eevee rendering engine, really interesting, really fast, quick at previewing materials. I also liked the material editor in Blender where you could just hook up nodes. That sadly is something that I miss when I use Modo. I would really like to be able to just create materials by sliding across some nodes. That being said, I do use Octane in my own work.
Yeah, there is Octane for Blender. The sad thing is that it's not compatible with Eevee in the same node group. So I think one of the real powers of Blender is that Eevee and Cycles can use the same materials. So you can develop a project with Eevee and then doing just your last moment render with Cycles, saving so much time and patience. And you can do a lot of animations with Eevee because you don't need to wait 16 minutes a frame if you have a good computer, getting your computer on hold and not using it for 5 days if you have 5 minutes animation. I think that's a turning point.
Yeah. How is Eevee with handling shadows and reflections and things now? So the last time I played with it, you had to there's some ways to work around glass and reflections and the more complex stuff that you can get from Cycles. They're updating that engine all the time, so I'm sure it's probably much better than the last time I tried it. So
I think that reflections as GI has got much better, especially with Samadon, like for having a very good global illumination. But shadows are really the big problem of Eevee. I can show you like the helmet or the robot dinosaur are done with just Eevee.
Yeah, sure. If you want to,
you can see some artifacts here, especially when the antenna pass through in front of the helmet. You can see the shadow overlapping over the helmet, and that's what Eevee's locking in. But if you make proper use of lights, I think it's not very good, but good enough to give you a very nice presentation of your design, especially in props.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, I mean, something like this. If you told me it was like, Marmoset tool bag or something like that, it's very good. The final result's very nice.
Yeah, all of this is done in Eevee. Glass has a lot of problems in Eevee.
Yeah.
Like the pipe, the oxygen pipe of the astronaut here is particularly bad conditions.
I still think this is fine, for review, and it still passes. The material, you can tell what it is.
I think it's great. Honestly,
it still works. Yeah.
Especially for me, I work in video games. This is absolutely comparable to a good video game engine. I don't do archives. This props looks good even in Eevee. All the gunship was done in Eevee.
This one, yeah.
Yeah, this one is completely done in Eevee, and I think that just taking more care on the material annihilates the needs of Cycles for props, not for archives.
Very nice. Yeah, I haven't actually mentioned this. So this was done for a design competition. So AMD was hosting a competition by the looks of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, I can see there's pistons as well. You actually like using pistons in your design quite a lot. I really like the way you've done the lower half of the leg, this sliding mechanism. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I finished the project for AMD, and while I was waiting for the results, I did the animations.
Very nice, yeah.
I really wanted to base everything on that sliding leg.
Yeah, that looks like quite a tricky thing to animate as well. I can imagine you having to go in
Oh,
there.
it was pure pain, but I wanted to learn rigging, just for understanding how painful it was, and it is enough to not let me do it again, probably.
Yeah. I mean, for the people that are completely new, it means going in there and just setting up every single piston, making sure that thing slides in and out, making sure that the toes can all pivot and all of it. It must have taken a long time. Do you use any? Do you use like Mixamo or anything else, or any like base animations to start with? So, for example, for this, would you take an existing animation and link it to the rig, or would you have to?
I guess I can, but I didn't. I took the video of a chicken walking.
Yeah, so the chicken walking was the inspiration. It seemed quite interesting, actually. I would have thought so.
Just because we cannot have dinosaurs walking, unfortunately. I needed something that reminded of that, so the chicken and some parrot were my references for the timings, for the movement of the neck and how it bounces.
That's really nice. It's also got the kind of the way the head on a chicken. If you move the chicken's body, the head seems to stay in position. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen videos of that. Yeah. This is another one that we've currently got promoting your work on the GFD social media channels. So this was a character design based on the helmet you designed before.
Yes, I would say that design is based on the sketch I've done.
Yeah. Is character design something that you have to do at work as well, or is that usually handled by someone else?
No, we have character artists, but I thought I was limiting myself just to vehicles, and since what I really like is world building, I needed to expand not necessarily into fantasy characters or pure anatomy, but at least designing suits and helmets or props for characters would have been a good idea.
Yeah. And actually, that just I think it'd be a good question just to ask. So, for anybody who's looking to break into the industry and they want to work on projects similar to yours, maybe they love spaceships, they really like sci-fi and technology and all this kind of thing, and they want to work on similar projects. What advice would you give to them for breaking into the industry? Or what advice would you even give to yourself when you were just starting out? Is there anything you would have done differently, for example?
Yes, that is something I would have done differently. I'm not sure I will say it though. Maybe I would have been more patient and I wouldn't have gone into a 3D artist position just to get into the company I wanted, because that was not the position I wanted. A suggestion I would give to students who are starting is, first of all, to know what they want, and if you're applying, for example, to Cloud Imperium Games, apply with stuff we want to see. Get informed on what are our workflows. There is a lot of public documentation, public videos that tell you how it works. The fact that sometimes I receive messages on LinkedIn from guys saying, "Hey, I did the test and they didn't contact me. Why?" And I see the test and they are done in traditional texturing. We don't do that. We use trim sheets, and if you just make one research on our station, you'd know it. So, despite it being Cloud Imperium Games or other companies, I would say that being informed on how that people work, what engine they use, what techniques they use, both for concept art and both for 3D art, is already enough of the job. Sounds crazy, but it's not. We have plenty of people that want to come and work for us, so
that's it. Really important to do the background research on the company and just make sure that your process matches. I know this can be quite difficult because, for example, at Egosoft, you mentioned there was some custom game engine, so for a level designer that might be quite difficult, but for a 3D artist, like you say, the process and the information is out there. So before you apply, making sure that the process that you currently use does match, and that you're producing designs that are, you know, suitable for the world. I don't think. I mean, you can answer this one, but a design doesn't have to match one to one, in my opinion, of the exact world, but it should feel that it does fit, or that the art director can look at it and say, yeah, this person can design for our world. I don't think that means that you just copy an IP one to one. I think it's important for somebody just breaking in to have even maybe their own voice as well in the portfolio and their own design taste. Personally, I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I mean, we cannot all pretend to, especially students, have a complete portfolio. When I got hired in Ecosoft 3 years ago, I afterwards become friend with the guy that decided to hire me, and we had discussions about why do you choose me and not the other candidates. And he told me, well, you have a spaceship in your portfolio, and we do spaceships. And when I was talking to you about would you like to do just sci-fi, you were looking quite happy to do that, so that was enough. But he told me that, so seeing my medieval robots,
These ones, yeah.
He was afraid that I was a mismatch, so he had to ask me if I was happy to do just design and be sure that I was not going to West to do some fantasy stuff one day. So
got it, yeah, because these are completely different. Yeah, completely different. These are still cool, by the way. I think these are very interesting in terms of the design. Very interesting.
Thanks.
But like you said,
in collaboration with Federico.
Federico, yeah. There's Federico. Yeah, very interesting design. But I'm assuming you're happy with the direction that you went. I'm hoping you're
yes,
happy.
Yes.
Yeah. Completely different direction and design style. Yeah.
Well, this is still retrofuturistic. I like mechanical stuff. That's that's quite obvious, I guess, at this point. I like to put my nose into mechanics, into let things work. But you cannot present yourself for a vehicle concept artist position if you have a portfolio made of characters. Easy as that.
I think as well, when you show this kind of work, you have this mixture of, you know, hard and soft surface sculpting, and there's a lot of shots here we can show the mesh. I'm assuming that you also learn, you know, how to make, you know, good topology, how to make, you know, the meshes, you know, right.
Well, at the time that was not really my background. I would say that I have learned it after 1 year in Germany and 2 here, because the stuff was not done for production. It was done for selling an IP. So a lot of polygons. I just cared about how they looked in the render, actually, if I have to be completely honest.
And were these a 3D print? Was this a model like to be built for real, or?
We wanted to build it, to print it, but then the project completely shattered under our hands.
Oh no.
So we just decided to sell it, metaphorically, on the internet and show what this work could have been.
I feel as well, when you go and look at other, say, you know, historical periods, you pick up all the design languages from that period. So by looking at, you know, say the armor of a knight, and, you know, you're looking at these pauldrons, and then I look at the spaceship design of this, and this overlapping, it almost feels like the armor of a knight. We've got these overlapping forms. That's reminds me of say the overlapping forms of the knight's armor. It feels similar. So it's
there is some design principle in con, like the layering of blades. Just in every case gives more depth to your design, so it's cool to your eyes to see some parallax around whatever you're designing, really.
Yeah, this is a good distribution of detail, and, you know, large, medium, small shapes, having focal points. You've got large areas of rest, areas of high detail. You know, you've got points of intense red where it's mostly black. All these things, you know, principles of contrast that we can use to draw the eye and make the design more interesting.
Yeah, let
Okay.
it flow.
Okay, and that just about wraps everything up. I have one last question to ask,
Sure.
and I did email you this in advance, so I hope you're ready. So I said Manchester is still in the dark ages in some respects, but what do you think the future will look like 100 years from now?
Okay. So I don't understand in which respects Manchester is in the dark age, because if you were born in Italy, you wouldn't say that. But it's difficult to understand where the future is going, especially in so many years. One thing I'm sure though is that we need ludical elements in our life, being them through a screen or through neurological implants or through very virtual reality. I don't know that, but we will need them.
Neurological implants, yeah. I believe
And
Elon Musk's one of his companies was
yes,
exploring that. I think so. Is that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
they're doing some tests on pigs. And I am sure that in the future, the work of the 3D artist will be easier and helped by IA, by 3D scans, and by tools. And one thing that the industry still needs will be artists and writers and thoughts and creativity. That is something that so far the IA cannot do.
This is it. It will still need that human input.
Oh God,
Of design,
I really hope.
Yeah. I really feel with the AI and the machine learning and all this stuff, at the end of the day, you still need a person to come in and, just do a around design thinking about, what something needs to do, its function. I feel with a lot of those AI generated images, a lot of them look very interesting. We can tell straight away that they've been generated by an AI, but what that will look like in the future.
I think that will be surely helpful, though. I mean, the less technical work we can do, the most creative work we can do, and we will not have, hopefully, games that repeat themselves with just architecture and some dressing changing between themselves.
Yeah. I mean, even now there's a lot of freely available on 3D models to get online. You can almost kit bash an entire game, but it still takes design to go in there and add the story and make things unique and interesting. And
yeah, you can do a mountain, but it's
yeah.
just a mountain after a while.
This is it. There's certain things that they won't change, but like you say, the need for designers and creativity and people's own personal touch, it's always going to be needed. I don't think the job's going to be going away anytime soon, for sure.
No, I'm confident we will, as artists, we will be needed for a while still.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Or even more.
That's it. Okay, that's great. Okay, well, thank you, Alberto. Is there any other pieces that we can go over? Or is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think it's fine like this.
That's great. Okay, so I hope everybody enjoyed our conversation with Alberto Petronio. Now, Alberto is going to be giving a presentation on his design process and going into much more detail than we went through here. And you can come listen to him on the Sunday, the 7th of August this year, where Alberto will be giving a presentation amongst all these other guys here. You can come down and listen to. So if you guys do want to find out more, you can go to gfdnorth.uk. You can go to sign up and you can get notified of when tickets are available to the public. Or if you just want to go on and take a look at some of the other artists who are giving presentations, you can do. Okay, thank you very much, Alberto, for your time. And
My
thanks.
pleasure.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing to have you on for the very first GFD North podcast. And a big thank you to everyone for listening. And you can hit the subscribe button on YouTube if you want to listen for the future podcasts with other guests. Okay, thank you everyone for listening. I've been Ryan Woodhouse. Thank you, goodbye.